Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Carson Scott. Coming up, an exclusive report on the Australian newspaper's end-of-year survey of law firms. Which firms are best for the health of your legal career? I'll answer that in a few moments. First off, though, COP21, the climate summit in Paris, wrapping up its meeting of 40,000 delegates. While there may, of course, still be debate over climate change itself, it's clear that the international community is moving full steam ahead in establishing a legal framework to combat it. It's set the most ambitious targets ever seen for reducing carbon emissions, while some may see this as yet another set of handcuffs on Australia's resource companies. My next guest saying there are actually opportunities here. It's the mining partner at K&L Gates and regular Law TV correspondent, Robert Milbourne. He's in our Brisbane studio for you today. Robert, welcome to you. Caught sight in your very comprehensive summary on implications of this, of that word of the hour, word of the year, you might argue, innovation, as it applies to the opportunities now post-Paris for the resource sector. What does it come down to? Because we've heard that word bandied around. We don't want to slip into the old habit of drinking Kool-Aid without reading what's on the label.
Yeah, hi, Carson. Thank you for bringing me back on, and I'm very interested in seeing what the results will be on law firms at the end of the day. My firm, K&L Gates, is very eager to be a part of that process. We are a global firm, and we have people in Paris who are part of COP21, and in connection with that, I did have a chance to look more deeply at the consequences of COP21 with respect to, as you mentioned, the resources sector and innovation. And really, a couple of the major issues that I think still are to be resolved may end up being in the favor of the resources sector. So we've been hearing a lot about fossil fuel divestiture, the downturn in almost all commodities, and doom and gloom. But it could be the result of COP21 and the new movement that is becoming increasingly strong globally, and with 190 countries present at COP21, that we will have new opportunities arising. And one of them, for example, when you talk about innovation, is that there are minerals that can be extracted by the mining firms that have the ability of chemical interaction with carbon in the atmosphere that will lock in that carbon for a stable and long period of time. There are innovations that we can look to from the mining and resources perspective that aren't commercially widespread at the moment. Another area which I think is particularly interesting is around demand. And we talk about where we are in terms of already locking in perhaps 1% of climate change growth. How do we stop this process so we don't get to that tipping point of 2%? Well, there's two ways of addressing that. One is reducing supply, and the other is reducing demand. And as the global fossil fuel divestiture movement has shown, there's one camp that's saying let's reduce supply, and that's really affected the mining houses. I would argue that the other half of this story is reducing demand. And there may be material consequences for mining firms as to how that plays out. For example, if we take a global perspective to reduce supply, then it's likely the threats that we've seen, for example, with respect to Adani and other major mine projects will only increase and only become more complicated, keeping those resources in the ground. Now, that may or may not be a good thing, but the alternative, which is happening around the world, are subsidies for consumption of petroleum. Now, in my view, it seems to me that we ought to be looking at the lowest carbon emission per kilojoule of energy, and not looking at thickets of regulation in Australia that limit high-quality reserves from entering the market.
On your point, though, to innovation and the extractive opportunities, the parallel that you're drawing is one of a reputation a la the tobacco industry. And if anything, if Paris threw up any reality check for investors, it was that, you know, when it comes to the extractive lobby, they are not exactly hitting their stride when it comes to winning hearts and minds. They remain on the outer. They are not part of a big tent discussion. When is that going to happen? Are you confident it will happen? Or like big tobacco, is it ostracized and set to be marginalized?
Well, that is a multi-billion-dollar question, Carson. The one way of thinking about it is that at the moment, if you were to look at any product that you have anywhere in the world, that product, whether it's the TV set you're looking at now or your iPhone or your car, everything that we have either comes from agriculture or mining. Mining and petroleum. So either the extractive industries or the agricultural industry. There's no question that climate change abatement will have to come from solutions that involve extractive products. So we're talking about the industry, in my view, from perhaps a misguided perception. Ultimately, the mining sector is going to be part of the solution that we have in the world. But as you said, there is a vilification of the industry that is coming close to the vilification of the tobacco industry. In my view, the mining industry does not kill. It doesn't kill people's lives. It doesn't make them shorter. In fact, it makes lives better. It provides electricity in Burma or in India where people don't have it. You know, currently 2/3 of the population of Burma have no power. Now, that's a humanitarian issue. Now, we just need to resolve it in a way that doesn't create more climate change. But the mining industry is part of the solution, and it needs to be more effective in that political and public relations effort.
Yeah, well, that maybe is its next big challenge for 2016, to rise to the occasion, to tell the story in that indispensable way that you have set out itself. Robert, as always, we run short of time, but thank you for bringing to the fore at least certainly some key points, ones to mull into the future. As always, appreciate it.
Thank you, Carson.